Hello everyone, I am Shailesh. I am doing my first year MBA PGPBM program at IIM Trichy, Chennai campus. This video is all about the economic impacts of inadequate sanitation in India. The agenda is to study the economic impacts of poor sanitation and the cost and benefits of improved sanitation option. The overall goal of this video is to provide decision makers at the country and regional levels with the evidence they need to advocate for increased investment in improving sanitation and to provide an improved evidence base for efficient planning and implementation of sustainable sanitation and hygiene options and programs. Study is highly relevant to the sanitation challenges that the people of India face today in both rural and urban areas of the country. These challenges are substantial, with large population defecating in the open or using unimproved toilets, and a very high proportion of human fecal waste being released untreated but onto land into bodies of water, especially from urban areas. Inadequate sanitation and poor hygienic practices lead to huge public health costs. Example, the associated cause of death and diseases that are attributable to inadequate sanitation, as well as environmental and other welfare impacts. Despite widespread recognition of human and social handicaps that poor sanitation places on developing countries, the considerable economic losses arising from inadequate sanitation are not well recognized since they are not counted properly. So, measuring the impact of inadequate sanitation comes broadly defined to include management of human excreta, solid waste, and drainage. The study focuses on associated hygiene behavior. This is not to discount the importance of the other aspects, but to focus on the key dimension that causes substantial health burden on Indians, especially the poor. The United Nations World Health Organization Joint Monitoring Program for Drinking Water Supply and Sanitation defines an improved sanitation facilities as one that hygienically separates human excreta from human contact. These include facilities that flush or pour flush into a pipe sewer system, septic tanks, or pit latrine, as well as ventilated system. Unimproved sanitation include defecation in the open bucket or hanging latrines, open pit latrines or those without a slab, and facilities flushing or pour flushing into open drains or open areas, that is not into a pipe sewer system, septic tanks, or pit latrine. Shared toilets are also considered unimproved facilities. It is not only a deficit of sanitary toilets that constitute inadequate sanitation, but also the unsafe disposal of human excreta, and most importantly, the whole range of unhygienic practices that breaks down the separation of human excreta from human contact and thus expose people to facial oral pathogen. For this study, economic impacts of inadequate sanitation are first estimated in non-economic units and then converted to economic units using appropriate valuation methods. So, the health related impacts improper sanitation include premature mortality, that is lost lives, especially those of children due to diarrheal or other diseases caused by poor sanitation. Cost of healthcare incurred in treating diseases caused by poor sanitation, and productivity losses, that is the time lost due to the people falling ill. And also the domestic water treatment impacts include household treatment of drinking water, use of bottled water for household pipe water, etc. Hauling cleaner water for distance usage of in the rural areas. Access time impact includes the cost incurred for accessing the shared toilets in the rural areas, cost of school absence time due to the inadequate toilets for girls, and work absence time due to inadequate toilets for working women. Tourism impacts include potential loss of tourism revenues and the economic impacts of gastrointestinal problems that is prevailing among the foreign tourists. The human capital approach was used for valuing human lives. This accounts for the economic loss during the person's productive years by valuing lost output due to the premature death. To compute this, the study used the unemployment adjustment labor share of GDP per worker. An analysis of this kind requires comprehensive data sets on multiple dimensions of sanitation, health, water resources, and other identifying areas. According to the survey conducted in 2006, the estimated total annual economic impact of inadequate sanitation in India amounted to a loss of 2.4 trillion rupees. This implied a per capita annual loss of 2,180 rupees. The purchasing power parity terms, the adverse economic impact of inadequate sanitation in India was $144 per person. These economic impacts were the equivalent of about 6.4% of India's gross domestic product in 2006. The health-related economic impact of inadequate sanitation was 1.75 trillion rupees, which was 72% of the total impact. Access time and water-related impacts made up to two main losses. Under the health-related impacts of 1.75 trillion rupees, diarrhea is the largest contributor, amounting to two-thirds of the total impact, followed by acute lower respiratory infection, accounting to 12% of the health impact. Coming to the most severe impact suffered by children. Of the total economic losses related to premature mortality, 79% was due to deaths and diseases in children below age 5. Diarrhea in children below age 5 accounted for more than 47% of the total health related economic impacts. Now let us see the disproportionate impact on the poor. The poor in India suffer substantial harm to their lives, health, and scarce financial resources because of inadequate sanitation. Poorer families tend to lose wages and spend precious resources treating illness. Children in poorer households are, again, the segment that is most affected, even with a conservative estimate that is based on cases of diarrhea, intestinal worms, and indirect impacts via cases of acute lower respiratory infection. In aggregated terms, the poorest 20% of the households are hit by a loss of 220 billion rupees, which is 20% of the total computed losses. Households in the poorest 20% that reside in rural areas bear a burden of 204 billion rupees, or 28% of the total losses of rural households. Per capita losses, urban households in the poorest quintile bear the highest per capita economic losses due to inadequate sanitation, specifically 1,699 rupees, which is 1.75 times the national average of 961 rupees, excluding mortality impacts, and 60% more than the urban average of 1,037 rupees. Coming to the monetary losses, economic impact includes both monetary impact, that is, people actually spending or losing money, as well as non-monetary impact, to which the monetary values are imputed for valuation. Monetary losses, a subset of economic losses, are estimated to be in 364 billion rupees in 2006. These losses were dominated by the cost of treating illness, which made up 58% of the total, followed by the lost productivity illness, the cost of treating water, which is 49 billion rupees, and accessing pipe water accounts to 18 billion rupees. Monetary impacts account for 15% of the total economic impact and are equivalent to about 1% of the GDP. Looking into the present and future losses, of the 2.4 trillion rupees lost, the loss of flow of 2006 economic value is 1.1 trillion rupees, which is 46% of the total economic impact, equivalent to 3% of that year's GDP. Furthermore, deaths resulted in a loss of human capital that would have generated economic flows that year and beyond. The discounted present value of these future losses is accounted and amounts to 1.3 trillion rupees, equivalent to 3.4% of GDP. Nevertheless, this study estimates the package of comprehensive sanitation and hygiene intervention comprising greater use of toilets, improved hygiene practices, and improved access to water could result in a potential gain of up to 1.48 trillion rupees, avoiding up to 61% of the losses, which is equivalent to 3.9% of the GDP. Potential sanitation market in India includes mobilizing households to build toilets, construct and operate waste disposal system, promote hygiene practices, combined with efforts by household to construct or upgrade to improve toilets, are likely to generate a huge market for sanitary products and services in coming years. While it is not an indication of gain in GDP, it nevertheless indicates potential economic activity that sanitation can generate. The national cumulative sanitation market has the potential of 6.87 trillion rupees over the 2020 period. The government of India has been alive to this issue and has made major investment in rural sanitation since mid 1980s. The national flagship total sanitation campaign Swachh Bharat mission, which now covers all districts in the country, has sought to shift the focus from building more toilets to making communities totally sanitized and promoting better usage and hygienic practices. While urban sanitation is not accorded priority earlier, with the launch of National Urban Sanitation Program in 2008, a national initiative has begun to promote access and appropriate infrastructure systems, processes, and hygiene practices in urban India. The National Sanitation Survey rating of 423 cities, which is class 1 cities in the country, has raised awareness about urban sanitation and propelled action from state to city stakeholders. The national flagship programs include the Jawaharlal Nehru National Program, the Urban Infrastructure Development Program for small and medium towns, encourage cities to promote sanitation. So, finally concluding it, this video underlines the finding that substantial investments are not only necessarily needed but can be regarded as effective only when they result in reducing the mortality, the harmful impacts of drinking water, the cost of welfare, and the negative impact of tourism that are all associated with inadequate sanitation. Thank you very much.